Karl-Ernst Kaissling, a pioneer in insect olfaction and chemical ecology, passed away on April 25, just 1 day short of celebrating his 93rd birthday. In this video, the scientific community honors his life, celebrates his extraordinary contributions, and express our deep gratitude for the foundation he created for generations of scientists. Many of us built our scientific careers upon the pioneer work of Karl-Ernst Kaissling, and we continue to stand on the shoulders of his remarkable discoveries, insight, and vision.
A giant has fallen. Karl-Ernst was the epitome of a gentleman and a scholar.
He was the father of electrophysiology in olfaction, and we lost something. We lost a piece of history.
So thinking about Karl-Ernst Kaissling and my scientific interactions with him, I so valued his viewpoint as a biophysicist and a theorist, thinking in a really fundamental way about how olfaction works. It was really stimulating because I'm a molecular biologist and a geneticist. And so we had many really spicy and deep conversations about how we think transduction works in insects and Scilla. And he's a legend, and I really miss him.
Karl-Ernst was one of the major players. When I started back in 82, 83, Seewiesen with Karl-Ernst, with Alexander Steinbrecht, and with Dietrich Schneider still, that was the Mecca. That's where I went to learn electrophysiology from Karl-Ernst and the structural work from Alexander. So it was really a cool place to go.
His lectures he gave in Canada and the later book, Wright Lectures in Insect Olfaction, is considered like the Bible in insect olfaction. Any researcher, any student who ever wants to work on olfaction, any aspect of olfaction, this is like the Bible. Everything you ever wanted to know about signal, about the signal strength, about the signal characteristics. So this book is considered the Bible in insect olfaction.
Karl-Ernst was spiritual, but not affiliated with a major religion. His lab was a Mecca, and the book of his lecture became the Bible of the field. Here, Karl-Ernst recounts how his remarkable scientific journey began.
Well, I met Schneider in '53, and even before I started studying. And then he asked me whether I could help him in his lab. And then I was so lucky to be able to sit in his lab whenever I had some free time. And he was at that time starting to do electrophysiology with this bombyx antennae of the silk moth. And it happened that in his house he lived together with Peter Karlsson. And Peter Karlsson told him, well, in our institute he was a co-worker of Adolf Butenandt, and Peter Karlsson told Schneider, well, we have since many years we work with this bombyx moth in order to isolate the pheromone which stimulates the males and elicits the courtship behavior in males. And we have so many of these moths, and the people do just a behavioral assay. They put a glass rod into a fluid, into a solvent with the extract of the female glands, and then they take this glass rod out, let the hexane or whatever the solvent was evaporate, put it in front of the males and see whether they start fluttering with their wings. And Schneider thought, well, he was a neurophysiologist and he worked on saltatory conduction of nerve impulses along nerve fibers, and so he was used to work with record electrophysiologically. And so he just pushed 2 electrodes into the antenna, into the isolated antenna, and then he blew the extract of the females over this preparation, and he saw a wave which he then called electroantennogram. He for control he narcotized this antenna with ether, and then the narcotized antenna did not respond anymore. So he thought this must be a natural signal which he recorded from the entire antenna, and later we found out that this was a signal which came from the olfactory neurons responding to this pheromone. Actually, my work was to sit in a corner of Schneider's lab and to look at the antennae, because we did not know how the antenna was constructed, and then I looked for me it was the first time to look through a microscope, and so I had practically my own teacher, and I could ask Schneider all kinds of questions, and so I learned a lot in his lab, and then I studied and paint and made pictures of all the little hairs and sensilla on this antenna, and studied the construction of the antenna, and so this was my job. And
he guided and inspired generations of scholars around the globe.
He was my mentor on electrophysiology. He taught me how to record for sensory cell, for olfactory receptor neurons. He was really patient with me. He was always sitting beside me, explain me every little detail. He was really generous. I spent 2 marvelous months in his lab, and I admire him, and I'm very happy to have met him.
When my laboratory moved to UC Davis, Karl-Ernst generously came to help obtain the first single-cell recordings from the navel orange worm, a major agricultural pest in California.
The major player is in here, right? It's the moth.
yes,
Poor guy.
should switch on the lights, maybe.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now this is experiment 11. You see, signal 11. That's what I have taken note now. Signal 11.
Now I go to change microphone.
Do another push, okay?
Yes.
This is a 0.1 nanogram. There we go. Oh, very nice response.
Okay.
There we go. Very nice response.
Karl-Ernst approached science with remarkable rigor and meticulous attention to detail.
I joined Walter's lab in 2005, and we started working on expressing the bombical receptor from the moth into the empty neuron. We wrote this nice manuscript we sent to Kaissling for initial comments before we were submitting for PNAS. And then Walter was communicating back and forth. One day, Walter comes to me and says that, well, I've been talking to Kaissling, and he wanted to know everything about you, every mentor you ever had, your educational background, your mentors, where you did your PhD, your postdoc, and every experience. He asked everything practically except your social security number. And then he said, well, now I'll read and send you back my comments. So that was Kaissling.
Karl-Ernst was one of the founders of the European Symposium on Insect Taste and Olfaction, known as ESITO.
This is true, yes. Together with Anna Maria Anjoy and Bill Hansen, we came together and we thought we should have a nice meeting in a nice atmosphere. And the first meeting started then in 1 year later in Villa Simius in Italy, Sardinia. And this was a very nice meeting, I remember. And several meetings followed at this place, but also at other places. Even we had once a meeting in our nearby our institute in Tutzing. And then there was another very nice meeting in Norway, organized by Hanna Mustaparta, and yes, several other meetings.
Yeah, Karl-Ernst, it was good days when we formed ESITO together. Meeting 1988, having the first meeting 1989. You did a really good job, and we were all inspired by you, me and Anna Maria and Joy, and this became the main meeting in our area, a meeting that everyone loves. So we kept on meeting, and we still are. So thank you for helping and joining in organizing this meeting.
ESITO provided a platform for the beginning and continuation of many remarkable careers in insect olfaction.
So, Karl-Ernst Kaissling was the one who really brought me to ESITO. So I was a little diploma student at this time, doing my diploma thesis with Giovanni Galizia, and Giovanni told me, you need to go to ESITO. That's a fantastic crowd, and I had no idea. I was never there. I didn't know anybody, didn't know the insect field, didn't know much about olfaction. So I went there, and Karl-Ernst, she took really nice care of me. He picked me up from the station and introduced me to people there, and that was fantastic. And that was for me really the start to become so excited about insect olfaction. And that was in 1999. Karl-Ernst, he was one of the organizers. It was at the Starnberger See, and it was in Tutzing. It was a fantastic meeting, really my first conference. And since then, I went to every ESITO meeting. So it's my favorite meeting.
I'm so happy to remember the importance that Karl-Ernst Kaissling had for the chemosensory community and for me personally. So I was an outsider to this community in the early 2000s, and I met him for the first time at ESITO in beautiful Sardinia, and having this great intellectual giant in the field being so welcoming to me, it really did change my entry into this community, and I am so sorry to hear about his passing. He's an absolute giant in the field, and I'll never be able to thank him enough for how he welcomed me.
He was also one of the strong players in organizing, and we had a wonderful meeting at the Max Planck Castle in Schloss Ringberg in those days. And I remember it was Les Williams, it was Nick Strausfeld, and several others. And we were having one hell of an evening, drinking a lot of red wine, actually emptying the wine cellar. But what happened at around 11:30, Karl-Ernst came down dressed in his pajamas and with a real nightcap on his head. And he said, "Now it is time to stop partying. Bill, you go first to bed." That was my funny story about Karl-Ernst.
In a written statement, his daughter Helge Kaissling said, "Karl-Ernst was a very caring person. He was a generous and open-minded father to his 2 children, including his children-in-law, and maybe an even better grandfather to his 2 grandchildren, whose lives he followed with great interest until the very end."
Such a great scientist and a lovely and inspiring example to many colleagues in insect olfaction. I remember how Professor Kaissling so kindly came to visit us for a few days, twice in New Haven and once in Cardiff. When he stayed with us, Karl-Ernst enjoyed being like a grandfather to our children. So sweet. We will miss him a lot.
Karl-Ernst was a scientific grandfather to all of us who built our research career on his pioneer work. We, along with future generations, will carry on his legacy in insect olfaction. Rest in peace, Karl-Ernst. Thank you for watching.